The alien marketplace was alive with noise and laughter, filled with glowing lanterns and strange metallic scents. Merchants shouted prices in 10 different languages, and ships hovered above the roofs, unloading cargo from across the galaxy. But in the middle of all that noise, something cruel was about to happen. A group of alien nobles, tall and covered in silver robes, stood together near a raised platform. They whispered and laughed, their voices sharp and proud. Beside them stood a small cage, and inside it was a trembling creature. An albino dragon, no bigger than a young horse, her scales pale white like frozen glass. Her wings hung weakly from her sides, one of them torn almost to the bone. Her eyes looked milky and unfocused. Blinded by the harsh lights around her, she had no strength left, only fear. The nobles sneered. "Such a pitiful thing, can you believe they called this a dragon?" One of them said, "It can't even fly, it's useless." Another laughed. They turned as a human approached, a mechanic with oil stains on his jacket and quiet eyes that had seen too much. His name was Eli Ward, a man known across the trade moons for fixing what others threw away. Eli had come to buy parts for his workshop, not a creature. But when he saw the little dragon shaking in the cage, something inside him went still. The crowd turned toward him as one of the aliens shouted, "Ah, the human is here! Let's give him something to fix!" The aliens laughed louder. The leader of the group stepped forward and smirked. "Eli Ward, you fix everything, don't you? Engines, drones, starship cores, even old androids. But let's see if you can fix this." He kicked the cage forward, and it rolled until it stopped at Eli's feet. The small dragon whimpered, hiding her face behind her broken wing. The nobles laughed harder, their voices echoing through the marketplace. "A gift for you, human. A little joke," the leader said mockingly. "Maybe you can make it fly again. Or maybe you'll finally admit that not everything broken can be fixed." Eli didn't answer. He crouched down beside the cage, looking at the dragon closely. Her skin was covered with old scars, and her breathing was weak. He could see the marks of chains around her neck and legs. She had been treated as trash, as something to laugh at, not as a living being. The mechanic's jaw tightened and his hands slowly curled into fists. "Why are you giving this to me?" he asked quietly. "Because no one else wants it." The alien smirked. "We were going to throw it away, but then we thought, who better to give it to than the human who can't stop trying to fix lost causes?" The group burst into another round of cruel laughter. Eli looked at the little dragon again. She was trying to hide, but her tail trembled as she moved. He saw her fear, her pain, and something more, and a tiny spark of life that refused to die. He took a slow breath, then stood up. "I'll take her," he said simply. The aliens blinked in surprise. "You will?" one of them said. "You actually want that thing?" Eli nodded, his voice steady. "I'll take her." The crowd erupted with laughter again. Some shouted, "Look, the human rescuer!" Others said, "He's going to fix a dragon now." Eli ignored them. He reached into his coat, pulled out a few credits, and placed them on the table. "For the cage," he said. His tone made the laughter fade slightly. The aliens waved dismissively. "Keep your money, human. We're already paid in laughter." Eli knelt again, unlocked the cage, and slowly opened the door. The dragon tried to move away at first, but she was too weak. Her legs slipped, and she fell against the bars. Eli spoke softly. "It's all right, little one. I won't hurt you." He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her trembling body, lifting her as gently as if she were made of glass. The dragon whimpered, her head resting weakly against his chest. As Eli turned to leave, one of the aliens shouted behind him, "You'll regret it, human. That thing's cursed. It will die before the next moon." Eli didn't answer. He just walked, step by step, through the crowd. The laughter echoed behind him like the sound of metal scraping against stone. The marketplace lights reflected off his face, showing quiet determination. People watched as he carried the small creature away, a human among thousands of alien faces, no one understanding why he cared so much. But in his mind, the answer was simple. He had seen enough cruelty, enough waste, enough jokes made from the suffering of others. When he reached his workshop on the edge of the city, he laid the dragon on his workbench. The room was dim and warm, filled with soft hums of machines. He covered her with a blanket and whispered, "You're safe now." The dragon's breathing steadied a little. Her eyes fluttered, and for the first time she made a small sound. A faint, broken chirp. Eli smiled faintly. "Yeah, we'll fix that too," he said under his breath. He looked out through the cracked window where the neon lights of the city flickered red and blue. Somewhere out there, the aliens were still laughing, calling it a joke. But inside his workshop, something far greater had begun. Eli sat beside the sleeping dragon, his tools waiting on the table. His hands were ready, but more than that, his heart was. He didn't see a broken creature. He saw a life worth saving. And as the city slept, a quiet promise filled the air, that this dragon would fly again. No matter how many times she had fallen, no matter how badly the world had laughed. The night was quiet, broken only by the soft humming of machines. Inside Eli's workshop, tiny lights blinked from metal tools and unfinished drones. Shelves were stacked with spare parts, cracked armor plates and tangled wires. The smell of metal and oil filled the air, but to Eli it was the smell of home. He placed the small albino dragon on a padded table near the back wall. Her body looked fragile under the dim light. Her breathing was uneven, and every time she moved, her wings twitched in pain. Eli looked at her with deep concern. "You've been through too much," he whispered softly, "but we'll fix it, I promise." He switched on his scanner. A blue beam swept over her body, showing internal damage, broken bones, and fragments of old metal stuck in her wings. Someone had tried to patch her before, but cruelly, like repairing junk instead of healing a living being. Eli's jaw tightened. "Who did this to you?" he muttered under his breath. For hours he worked carefully, cleaning her wounds, removing the sharp pieces of metal, and wrapping her fragile bones with soft nanofiber bandages. His hands moved with calm skill, steady and precise. He didn't rush because he knew. Trust took time. Healing took patience. The dragon opened her cloudy eyes and watched him silently. Her gaze was full of confusion, fear, and something new. Curiosity. When Eli reached for his wrench, she flinched, expecting pain, but instead, he smiled gently. "It's all right, little one, this tool doesn't hurt," he said softly, showing her the harmless light. Her breathing slowed as he worked. He hummed a quiet tune while adjusting a small energy patch to her wing joint. The melody filled the room, simple and calm, and it reminded the dragon of something she had never known: safety. Hours passed until finally he stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. "All right," he said. "That's enough for tonight." He covered her with a soft blanket made from recycled thermal fabric. "Rest now, Luma," he whispered, giving her a name for the first time. He didn't know why he chose that name, maybe because her white scales reflected light like moonlight, or because she reminded him of hope. Fragile but still glowing, the name seemed to fit perfectly. The next morning, the sun rose over the horizon, its rays glinting off the city's metal rooftops. Eli was already awake, tinkering with a small hover drone while the dragon slept. When he heard a faint noise, he turned. Luma was awake, lifting her head weakly, sniffing the air. "Good morning," he said gently, placing a bowl of nutrient gel near her. She hesitated but slowly reached out, tasting it with her forked tongue. Eli smiled when she started eating. "That's it, eat. You need strength." Days turned into weeks, and slowly, the broken dragon began to recover. She could move her legs, lift her head higher, and even stretch her wings a little. Eli repaired her feathers one by one, attaching small metallic supports that shimmered when she moved. Each day he adjusted the design, improving balance and strength. When she took her first step across the workshop floor, Eli felt like he was witnessing a miracle. "That's it, Luma, you're doing it," he said, his voice filled with pride. The bond between them grew deeper every day. Luma followed him around the workshop like a curious child, watching how he repaired engines, welded metal, or coded the hover drones. Sometimes she would try to mimic his movements, tapping tools with her claws. Eli laughed. "Easy there, mechanic's apprentice," he teased. At night, when the city outside was silent, Luma would rest near his chair, her wings folded neatly. The sound of her breathing became part of the workshop's rhythm. Steady, peaceful, alive. But not everything was calm. One evening, as Eli adjusted a wing frame design, a small spark from the generator made Luma jump. She spread her wings too quickly, and one of the braces snapped. She fell, letting out a sharp cry of pain. Eli rushed to her side. Hey, easy, it's okay," he said softly, placing his hands gently on her neck to calm her. She whimpered, lowering her head, ashamed. Eli shook his head. "Don't be sorry, Luma, that means you're trying." His eyes softened. "Machines fail before they work perfectly, and so do we. That's how we learn." He spent the rest of the night rebuilding her brace, stronger this time, using a lighter alloy. When he finished, he attached a small energy crystal at the base of each wing. The crystals glowed faintly, lighting the room in soft blue and white. The dragon blinked at the light, amazed. "Try again tomorrow," Eli said quietly. "Not tonight. Rest first." She nodded as if she understood. Curling up beside the glowing lamps outside, however, not everyone shared Eli's compassion in the nearby markets. Whispers spread about the human who fixed a broken dragon. Some said it was a waste of time, others said it was dangerous. Dragons were once weapons of war, tools for empires. A living dragon meant old fears returning. One evening, a shadow passed by Eli's window, a tall figure with dark armor, watching silently before disappearing into the crowd. Luma raised her head and growled faintly. Eli turned to the window, sensing something wrong. "It's nothing," he said, though deep down he knew it wasn't. He knelt beside her again, checking her wings. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "we try to fly." Luma looked at him, her eyes no longer blind with fear but bright with trust. The workshop lights flickered, casting long shadows across the walls, and in that soft light, it was hard to tell who had been saved, the broken dragon or the lonely mechanic. Eli smiled faintly. "Sleep, little one. Tomorrow the stars will see what they laughed at." And as the city lights faded into night, the sound of her slow breathing mixed with the gentle hum of machines, marking the beginning of something the galaxy had never seen before. A friendship between a human and a dragon that would one day shake empires. Morning sunlight streamed through the cracks in Eli's workshop, painting soft gold lines across metal walls. The smell of warm oil and sparks filled the air. Outside, the city was already alive, merchants shouting, ships roaring, people laughing. But inside, there was only quiet determination. Luma stood at the center of the workshop, her silver-white wings spread wide. The small metallic supports along her bones gleamed faintly, glowing with energy from the tiny crystals Eli had installed. Her eyes, once clouded, were now sharp and clear. She blinked slowly, looking at Eli, waiting for his signal. "Easy, girl," Eli said, his voice calm. "Just stretch them first, feel the weight." He stepped back, watching carefully as she extended both wings. The air hummed softly as power flowed through the fibers. Eli smiled, his heart pounding. "Beautiful," he whispered. Luma moved her wings again. This time stronger, the air rippled, dust rising from the floor. For a moment, Eli thought she might actually lift off, but then her leg slipped and she stumbled. The energy flickered, the lights dimmed, and she let out a soft cry of pain. Hey, Eli rushed forward, catching her head gently. "It's okay, no harm done." The dragon rested her chin against his shoulder. Exhausted, her breath came in short gasps. Eli ran his hand along her neck, feeling the pulse of her heart against the metal brace. "We'll fix the balance," he murmured. "You're almost there." For the next few days, Eli worked nonstop, fine-tuning the power flow, adjusting the angle of the wings, and adding a stabilizer chip he'd salvaged from an old cargo drone. He spoke to Luma the whole time, explaining every step like a teacher. "See? This connector here controls your left joint," he said, tapping the small wire. "It's what keeps you steady." Luma listened, her bright eyes following every move. She didn't understand the words, but she understood his tone, patience, care, and belief. One night, as rain tapped against the metal roof, Eli sat beside her, sketching diagrams on his tablet. "You know," he said softly, "people used to laugh when I said machines could have feelings." He chuckled. Guess they'll laugh harder when I say dragons can too. Luma tilted her head, letting out a curious hum. Eli smiled. Yeah, you get it, he said, reaching up to scratch behind her jaw. She leaned closer, her breath warm against his arm. The next morning, they tried again. Eli stood near the back door, where the open air met the hill behind his workshop. Wind swept through the tall grass, and in the distance the twin suns of the colony rose. All right, Luma, he said. Today we don't aim for the sky. Just for the wind. The dragon stepped outside, the sunlight bouncing off her white scales like shards of glass. Her claws pressed into the dirt, feeling it for the first time in months. She spread her wings and the stabilizers came to life, humming in rhythm. Ready? Eli called, holding his breath. Luma crouched. Her tail straightening for balance, she beat her wings once, twice, then harder. The ground vibrated, dust swirling around her, and for a heartbeat, she lifted. Eli gasped, "You did it!" But the moment broke too fast. Her right wing faltered, the power dropped, and she fell back to the ground with a sharp cry. The sound echoed through the valley. Eli ran to her side, kneeling in the dirt. It's okay, he said, his hands trembling as he checked the braces. No breaks, no damage, just strain. Luma looked at him, her eyes watering from pain. He could see the frustration in her face. She had wanted to fly so badly. Eli brushed her snout gently. You didn't fail, Luma, he said softly. You took the first step, and that's how every flight begins. He sat beside her for hours, letting her rest. The sky above slowly turned orange as the sun sank lower. Tomorrow, he whispered, we try again, and the next day and the next, until you don't need these wires anymore. That night, Eli couldn't sleep. He stared at the half-finished designs on his desk, the metal wings, the energy regulators, the flight stabilizers, and all he could think about was the pain in Luma's eyes. He wanted her to feel what he once felt as a child on Earth, the rush of air, the freedom, the endless sky. He got up, went to the workbench, and began crafting something new. He called it the Soul Circuit, a microcore made from human tech and dragon biocrystals. It would link her nervous system to the mechanical parts, letting her control them as if they were her real wings. By dawn, his hands were shaking, his eyes red, but the device was ready. He installed it carefully at the base of her wings, whispering, "Please work," when she woke. He explained gently, "This is yours now, not mine." He tapped her chest. "You control the flight, not the machine." She blinked, then flexed her wings, and for the first time, Eli saw them move perfectly, smooth, strong, balanced. The sound of the wings was like thunder mixed with music. Eli laughed out loud. "That's it, Luma. That's what we were waiting for." She spread her wings wide, and this time when she jumped, she didn't fall. She glided a few meters across the workshop yard, landing clumsily but upright. Eli ran after her, cheering, "You flew. You actually flew." Luma turned to him, chest rising and falling, then released a deep, proud roar that shook the ground. Her voice was no longer weak. It was alive, powerful, echoing through the hills. But far away in the city's shadowed spires, a figure in a dark uniform listened to that roar through a recording device. The sound carried through the comms channel. "The human did it," a cold voice said. "He made it fly," another voice, deeper, answered. "Then destroy both of them before the others find out." Back in the workshop, Eli had no idea that his miracle had already drawn dangerous attention. He just stood in the light watching Luma stretch her wings again, tears glinting in his tired eyes. "Welcome back to the sky," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You were born for it, and high above, where only dragons once ruled," the wind seemed to whisper back, carrying a promise that this was only the beginning, and that their story would soon reach the stars. The video footage spread faster than light. Someone in the nearby city had recorded Luma's first flight. The image of a human mechanic standing beside a living albino dragon, her wings glowing with human-made energy, flashed across hundreds of screens. Within hours, it reached the far edges of the Galactic network, and by dawn, it reached the one place Eli Ward wished it never would, the Galactic Empire Command. In the cold halls of the Imperial Citadel, silence followed as the hologram of Luma's flight played. The dragon's wings glowed silver and blue, her roar echoing through the chamber. Around the long glass table sat the most powerful military minds in the quadrant. Armored and proud, a tall general leaned forward, his voice low and sharp. That dragon was declared extinct 20 years ago. Another replied coldly. It seems the human brought it back. The room filled with whispers. He's a mechanic. Not a scientist, he must have help. Or he's hiding something. At the head of the table, General Kyle, a broad-shouldered alien with gray, ridged skin, stood and turned off the hologram. Dragons were weapons of our empire, he said slowly. We burned their nests for a reason. No human will be allowed to bring one back. He looked toward his officers. Find this mechanic, find the dragon, and erase both. Quietly, within an hour, a black starship left the Citadel, cutting through the darkness of space toward the colony moon where Eli lived. Eli had no idea what storm was coming. He was too busy working, smiling, fixing a loose bolt on Luma's wing support. You're getting better every day, he said proudly. Soon you won't need my help at all, Luma chirped softly, pressing her head against his shoulder. Her scales shimmered faintly in the light. She was no longer weak. Her muscles had grown strong, her eyes bright. Her spirit alive again outside. The sun set behind the hills, painting the sky orange and gold. The moment was peaceful, almost perfect. Until the ground trembled, Eli froze. A distant hum filled the air. Not from storms or wind, but from engines, warship engines. He rushed to the window. The sky above the valley was glowing red. 3 Imperial dropships descended through the clouds, lights flashing. The sound of their thrusters roared through the air. Luma raised her head, her body tensed. She growled low, sensing danger. Eli's face hardened. They found us, he whispered. He ran across the room, pulling open a floor panel. Underneath lay a hidden compartment filled with tools, small defense drones and an old blaster. He grabbed the blaster, checked the charge, and looked at Luma. Listen to me, he said firmly. You stay hidden, no matter what happens, understand? But Luma didn't move to hide. She stayed by him, eyes locked on the door. The first explosion came seconds later. The workshop's front wall cracked under the blast. Metal flew across the room, smoke filled the air. Eli coughed, covering his face. No, not now, he muttered. I worked too hard for this. Through the smoke, figures in black armor marched inside, their faces hidden behind reflective visors, energy rifles in hand. Eli Ward, the lead soldier called, his voice metallic. You are under arrest for possession of a restricted biological weapon. Eli laughed bitterly. Weapon? He shouted. She's not a weapon, she's alive. The soldier raised his gun. Step aside, human, Luma roared. Her wings flaring wide, the soldier stepped back in fear. The glow from her wings brightened, casting light across the shattered workshop. Eli stood between her and the soldiers, his voice low but fierce. You want her? You'll have to go through me. Blaster fire erupted. Sparks exploded as bullets hit machines. Eli ducked behind a metal crate. Firing back, one drone came to life, its sensors glowing red. Firing stun rounds at the soldiers. Shut it down, shouted the captain, but before he could, Luma moved. Her wings snapped open with a deafening sound, sending a wave of energy through the room. The soldiers were thrown backward, their armor smoking. Eli's hand shook as he reached for her. Luma, stop. You'll hurt yourself. But she didn't listen. Her roar shook the ground. Her eyes burned bright white. Her energy output was too high, sparks leaping from her wings. Eli grabbed his wrench and yanked open the side panel of her mechanical brace. Come on, he whispered desperately, rerouting the power flow. Hold it together. Girl, the system stabilized, the energy settled, and the light around her dimmed. She collapsed to her knees, exhausted. Eli caught her head before it hit the ground. You're okay, he breathed. I've got you. The soldiers outside regrouped. One shouted through a loudspeaker, Surrender now, human. You can't win. Eli looked down at Luma, her sides rising and falling with slow, pained breaths. He stroked her snout gently. Maybe not, he whispered, but I'm not letting them take you. He pressed a button under the work table, activating the lockdown protocol. Metal shutters slammed over the windows. The walls sealed. The workshop lights flickered red. The lead soldier outside turned to his commander. He's barricaded himself, sir, the commander smirked. Then burn it down. Inside, Eli worked quickly, trying to repair what was left of Luma's systems. The air grew hot, smoke creeping through the cracks. Flames licked the walls as blasters struck from outside. He coughed, his eyes watering. Stay with me, Luma, he said. Just one more fix. One more flight. Her eyes opened weakly. She looked at him, her voice faint but clear. A low chirp like a question. Eli smiled through the smoke. Yes, he said softly. You're going to fly again. He connected the last wire, sealed the power core, and whispered, Now. Luma's eyes flared bright blue. Her wings unfolded, metal plates glowing with light. The smoke parted as the energy field built around her. Eli stood beside her, one hand resting on her shoulder. You fly, he said firmly. Fly and never come back. She hesitated, but he nodded. Go. With one mighty beat, she broke through the collapsing roof. Fire and debris exploded outward as she soared into the burning sky. Her wings left a trail of silver fire behind her. The soldiers below stared upward in disbelief. It's flying, one whispered. It's really flying. Eli watched through the smoke-filled hole in his roof. His face lit by her glow, he whispered, You did it, before collapsing against the wall, his voice barely audible. Outside, Luma circled once above the workshop, her heart aching. She roared one last time, a sound filled with grief and love, before vanishing into the night clouds. And below, in the ruins of his workshop, Eli Ward smiled faintly through the smoke and whispered to himself, You'll fly when I fall. The sky burned red that night. The smoke from Eli's destroyed workshop twisted into black spirals, glowing faintly under the twin moons above the flames. Luma's silver-white body cut through the dark clouds like a comet. Her wings roared with energy, each beat leaving a glowing trail behind her. She didn't know where to go, she only knew one thing. She had to protect him. Down below, the fire spread across the hill. The sound of soldiers shouting mixed with the crackling of burning metal. Their ship circled the area, searching for signs of life. Target confirmed, a pilot said through comms. Dragon is airborne, tracking its heat signature. Inside the smoke, Eli lay half buried under debris, coughing weakly. His left arm was burned, his leg pinned under a heavy pipe. The world around him was half red, half shadow. He could still hear the engines outside. He smiled faintly through the pain. Go, Luma, he whispered. Don't come back for me. But Luma heard him. Her senses were sharper than human ears. The faint voice of the man who had given her life reached her even through the roaring wind. She turned sharply in the sky, ignoring the targeting sensors locking onto her wings. She's coming back. A soldier yelled, Open fire! Blaster beams streaked through the clouds, blue and orange lines slicing the night. Luma twisted midair, her new wings moving faster than they ever had before. Sparks flew where the shots grazed her armor, but she didn't stop. Her heart burned with one thought. He saved me. Now I save him. She dived, a flash of light against the red smoke. The shockwave from her wings knocked one dropship off balance, sending it spinning into a hillside. Fire erupted as it crashed, lighting up the battlefield. Eli shielded his eyes from the blast. His voice hoarse, No, Luma, go. But she didn't listen. The remaining soldiers regrouped. Setting up energy cannons. Bring it down, shouted their commander. Aim for the power core on its back. They fired again, this time with precision. One beam struck her left wing. Tearing through the metal fibers, Luma screamed in pain, spinning out of control for a moment before stabilizing herself. High above, she fought the wind, her body trembling from damage. Yet something inside her refused to stop. Every circuit, every bone, every cell pulsed with one command, protect him. She swooped low over the burning workshop, landing hard, the ground cracking under her claws. Dust exploded into the air. She pushed debris aside with her wings. Her bright eyes searched the smoke until she found him. Eli lay motionless, still trapped under the metal pipe. His eyes fluttered open when her shadow fell over him. He coughed. Luma, what did I tell you? Go. She made a low sound, half roar, half cry, as if refusing. Her claws hooked around the beam, pinning him. She heaved, metal screeching. Her wounded wing shook violently from the strain. Sparks flew from her braces. But she kept pushing. Eli shouted, Stop! You'll break your wings. With one last effort, the beam flew aside. Eli fell free, gasping. She nudged him gently with her nose. As if asking him to climb on, he shook his head weakly. No, you can't carry me. Your frame's too damaged. Another explosion sounded nearby. The soldiers were closing in. Their searchlights cut through the smoke, voices shouting, There! The human and the dragon. Eli glanced at her wings, one torn, one cracked, and then looked at her glowing eyes. He smiled faintly. You stubborn thing, he whispered. All right. Let's do it one last time. He climbed onto her back, pain shooting through his leg, but he didn't care. He held onto the base of her neck as she crouched low, her wings spread wide, shaking from the heat and damage. Ready? He said quietly. One more flight. The soldiers fired again, but it was too late. With a roar that split the sky, Luma leapt upward, wings bursting with silver flame. The air around her exploded, forming a shockwave that sent soldiers tumbling and ships spinning. They rose higher and higher, breaking through the thick smoke into open sky. The stars appeared again, cold, silent, endless. Eli looked up at them, the wind tearing through his hair, and whispered, "You're flying, Luma. You're really flying." But their moment of freedom didn't last long. The remaining Imperial gunship locked on, firing a plasma missile. The glowing projectile chased them through the clouds. Luma turned sharply, diving into a narrow canyon. The missile followed, its light reflecting off the cliff walls. Eli grabbed a tool from his belt, shouting over the roar, "Steady, Luma!" He reached back and yanked a small power conduit from her broken brace, rerouting its charge. "Now climb!" Luma shot upward at full speed, wings burning bright. The missile missed them by inches, crashing into the canyon below. The explosion lit the night like a second sunrise. Eli laughed breathlessly, but the joy faded when he saw the smoke rising from her left wing. The power core was overheating. "It's too much strain," he said urgently. "You have to land," but Luma didn't slow down. She was flying higher. Toward the mountain peaks where the stars met the mist, her heart raced faster than her damaged core. The energy readings blinked red, warning lights flashing across her brace. "Stop," Eli shouted. "You'll burn out." Luma let out a sound that almost sounded like a word, a low, trembling growl that carried meaning. "No," she climbed higher, the light from her wings turning from silver to gold. The clouds broke open, revealing the vast sky above. For the first time, Eli saw her fly not as a machine, not as a creation, but as something alive and something magnificent. She soared above the storm, her wings blazing against the stars. Then her body trembled. The power core reached critical. Sparks erupted around her. Eli shouted, "Luma!" But his voice was lost in the roar of the wind. She turned her head, her glowing eyes meeting his one last time. And there was no fear, only peace. Then she tilted her wings and released all her stored energy in one final burst. The explosion of light painted the clouds white for miles. The soldiers below covered their faces, thinking it was the end. But when the light faded, she was still there, scarred, smoking but flying. Her systems burned out, yet she stayed in the air through pure strength. She glided down toward the mountains, where the air was thin and quiet, landing on a snowy ridge. Eli slid from her back, collapsing beside her. His voice broke. "You did it, Luma. You flew." Her head lowered beside him, her breath weak. She closed her eyes as snowflakes fell on her wings. Eli sat beside her, his burned hand resting on her scales. "I'm here," he whispered, "always, and under the cold stars, with the mountain winds howling through the night." The legend of the mechanic and the dragon began to spread, carried on whispers and light, of a human who taught a broken creature to fly, and a dragon who refused to let him fall. The storm had passed, but its shadow lingered. The mountain where Luma had landed was now silent, her wings broken, her body still. Snow covered the burned marks on the ground, hiding the scars of the battle. For days no one came, no one saw, but legends. They don't wait for permission to spread. They find their own wings. A passing trader ship caught the faint pulse of an energy core from the mountain ridge. When they arrived, they found two things: a human's burned jacket and claw marks frozen into the ice that glowed faintly under moonlight. They didn't know it yet, but they had discovered the beginning of a story that would change half the galaxy. Soon, whispers began to flow through spaceports and outposts. "A human brought a dragon back," some said. "No, he built one," others replied. "He didn't build it," said another. "He saved it." They called him the mechanic of miracles. Every colony had its own version of the tale. Some said Eli Ward turned himself into light to keep the dragon flying. Some said the dragon carried his soul inside her core. The truth was simpler and far more human. He had believed when no one else did. Far away, deep in the wild sectors of space, a shadow moved between asteroids. Silver wings spread against the void. Scorched but strong, Luma lived. Her systems were damaged, but her heart, both metal and flesh, still beat. She carried with her the last message Eli had recorded in her memory core. "Luma." His voice echoed softly inside her. "If you're hearing this, it means you survived. Good. That's what I wanted. Don't hide from them, don't run, show them what we built. Show them that broken things can rise. Each night she played that message, curling her body around it like a mother protecting her egg. Her bright eyes watched distant planets below, wondering if somewhere another human would understand what Eli did. Meanwhile, the Empire could not silence the story. The footage of her flight, once meant to prove human disobedience, became something else entirely. Across the colonies, children watched it in secret. Engineers studied it frame by frame, and rebel cells used it as their symbol. They painted her wings on their ships, white and silver, and under them wrote a single line, "Fix what they break." That became the slogan of a movement. The human mechanic who defied the Empire was gone, but his spirit now lived in the machines of 1,000 others. Junkers rebuilt drones, miners repaired their own suits, and slaves broke the locks off their collars, all whispering the same phrase, "If he could fix a dragon, we can fix ourselves." The Empire tried to bury the truth. They sent out new decrees, banning all research involving human biotech hybrids. They called Luma a biohazard, a ghost weapon, a threat to civilization. But even their soldiers started to ask questions. Was she really a weapon? One young recruit whispered, or was she something better? Years passed. The colonies changed. New alliances rose in the shadows, and at the center of it all, a symbol kept returning. The white dragon flying through smoke and flame. Luma became myth, a ghost of hope and rebellion. Then one day, on the desert planet of Charon 5, a mining crew digging beneath the surface found something unexpected. Buried under crystal dust lay a black box, old and half-burned, with the mark of a wrench carved into it. Eli Ward's insignia. They brought it to the city engineers. Curious. When the box was activated, a hologram appeared. It flickered, and then a familiar voice spoke, calm and tired. "If you're hearing this," said Eli's hologram, "then you found my workshop's backup core. I never wanted to be remembered for fixing machines. I wanted to be remembered for fixing hearts, human or otherwise. So if you're out there and something's broken, don't throw it away, fix it, it's what we do." The people in that dusty city stood in silence. Some smiled, some cried, and someone whispered. The mechanic lives. In that moment across the galaxy, small signals began to light up again. Engineers sending messages to each other, using the old phrase as their code. For Eli, they wrote, "For the dragon," and out in the cold darkness of space. Luma heard it too. The networks buzzed with his name, and she lifted her head for the first time in years. The pain in her wings no longer mattered. She could feel him there, not in body, but in purpose. She soared from the asteroid field, her rebuilt wings shining brighter than before. The energy inside them pulsed with new life, powered by something beyond wires and cores, powered by belief. Below her, a convoy of rebel ships saw the silver glow and followed it through the clouds. The crew stood at the windows in awe. "Is that?" one of them whispered. "Yes," another said quietly. "That's her. That's the mechanic's dragon." Luma flew above them, her shadow stretching across the sky to those below. It felt like seeing hope itself take form, and somewhere, between the stars and the silence, Eli's voice still whispered through her circuits, "You did it, Luma. Now go fix the galaxy." The legend spread to every system, every moon, every forgotten corner of space. On broken stations, her story was told in quiet whispers. In schools, children drew pictures of the albino dragon, and in secret, even Imperial engineers studied Eli's blueprints. Not to copy his work, but to understand his heart. They learned what he had always known, that creation was stronger than destruction, that kindness was more powerful than command. And so the galaxy began to change, not with wars or rulers, but with repairs, with people rebuilding instead of breaking, helping instead of mocking. The mechanic's workshop was gone, but his legend had rebuilt the stars themselves. The galaxy had changed. The empires that once ruled with fear now trembled at the sound of wings. Across the stars, the symbol of silver and white, a dragon in flight, shone on banners, ships, and hearts. It was more than a story now. It was a movement, and at its heart flew Luma, the albino dragon who once could not even stand. She soared through the endless night, her rebuilt wings no longer patched with metal or wire, but living tissue infused with Eli's designs, a perfect fusion of nature and machine. Her body glowed with a steady light, neither blinding nor fading, a beacon that guided those who still believed. Below her, A fleet followed. Ships crafted by humans and aliens alike, patched together from scavenged metal and old technology, yet stronger than anything the Empire could imagine. Each vessel carried Eli's insignia, the wrench and flame, carved beside the cockpit windows, and every pilot whispered his name before takeoff. For the mechanic, they said. For the dragon, Luma flew above them silently, her eyes reflecting the stars. In her heart she carried the memory of a human's gentle voice, still echoing in her circuits. Fix what they break. He had told her that once, and now his words had become the law of the new skies. The Empire watched in silence. Broken and humiliated, their fleets had fallen. Their colonies rebelled, and even their soldiers began painting the white wing symbol on their armor. The new era was born not through fire but through repair. General Kyle, the same man who once ordered Eli's death, now sat in a dark chamber, staring at the image of Luma flying above the liberated systems. "You can't destroy belief," he muttered bitterly. "Not when it grows wings." He turned to his officers. "Withdraw the troops. Let the sky have her." For the first time in centuries, the Empire surrendered without a war. On the planet of Myria, a young girl ran through the marketplace clutching a small mechanical toy dragon. It flapped its wings weakly, sparks flickering from its core. "It's broken," she said sadly to an old man repairing hover engines. The man smiled, his hands rough and oil-stained. "Then we fix it," he said. He twisted a few bolts, adjusted the tiny circuit, and handed it back. The dragon's wings glowed and began to fly again. The girl gasped, "You fixed it." The old man nodded. "That's what we do, little one. We fix what's broken," and above them, high in the clouds, the real Luma passed overhead, her shadow drifting across the city. The people stopped and looked up, cheering as her light filled the sky. In orbit, aboard the command ship Aurora's Hand, hundreds of human and alien engineers worked together. They were the first members of the reconstruction fleet, a new alliance dedicated not to war but to rebuilding the galaxy. A young commander stood before the viewing glass, watching the dragon's silhouette pass by. "It's strange," she whispered. "She doesn't lead with orders, but everyone follows her." An older officer smiled. "That's how legends lead, not by command, but by example." They both stood in silence, watching Luma dive through the starlight, her body glowing brighter than any engine. Inside her chest, deep within the fusion of metal and life, Eli's final message replayed again, his voice calm, warm, and filled with quiet pride. "If you can fly, Luma, then I did my job. Don't stop there, though. Help them build again. Help them rise." She tilted her wings, turning toward a dying world below, an old battlefield still scarred with craters. Luma descended, her light falling across the ruins like dawn. The people there looked up, shielding their eyes. She landed gently. Folding her massive wings, her presence was silent but powerful. Children ran forward without fear, touching her scales, feeling warmth instead of fire. One boy looked up and whispered, "You're the one from the stories, aren't you?" Luma lowered her head, her eyes soft. Then she released a pulse of energy from her core. Spreading warmth through the ground, the dead soil began to glow faintly green, life returning where there had been only ash. The people gasped, kneeling as grass began to grow. They didn't call it a miracle, they called it a repair. From that moment, wherever she went, life followed. Her light restored planets, revived oceans, healed air. The rebuild fleet followed her path, constructing homes, hospitals, and schools in her wake. The galaxy, once filled with fear, learned how to hope again every year. On the anniversary of the night of fire and flight, people across the stars lit small lamps in their windows. Some shaped them like dragons, others like a simple wrench, all glowing in silver and white, and when they looked up, they could always see her, the albino dragon gliding across the heavens, her wings reflecting the light of 1,000 lamps. On one quiet night, as Luma drifted through a calm nebula, she saw something flicker among the stars, a satellite signal. Carrying a sound, it was a voice, old and fading, but familiar. "If you're still out there, Luma, keep flying," her heart leapt. Her wings flared wide. She roared into the cosmos, a sound so powerful it echoed across entire systems. The galaxies seemed to shimmer in answer, as if the stars themselves remembered his name, Eli Ward, the human mechanic who fixed more than metal. He fixed the sky. As centuries passed, humans and dragons became inseparable. Some even bonded with them at birth, sharing thoughts and emotions. They built floating cities powered by Luma's design. And the children who grew up there learned the same lesson Eli once taught, that nothing broken is beyond repair. And whenever someone lost hope, they looked to the sky, where a white streak of light crossed the stars, leaving a trail of silver fire. Some said it was just space dust. Others smiled and said, no, that's her. She's still flying, and perhaps she was. Because legends don't die, they just keep flying higher, carrying the dreams of those who dared to believe. The mechanic had been right all along. You can cage a body, you can silence a voice, but you can never ground a heart that was born to fix what others break. And so the galaxy lived on, rebuilt and renewed. Under the eternal shadow of silver wings, the sky was no longer ruled by war. It was ruled by hope, by creation, by belief. The sky had been broken once, but the mechanic and his dragon made it whole again.